All right. It is another week, another Thursday stream. My name's Brian. I am the product manager of LaunchBox. Welcome in, everybody, and welcome. How you guys doing? Welcome to everybody watching on YouTube, I guess later. And we've been doing this for quite a little while now, every Thursday, and we're going through our list. If I can summarize what we do every week, it comes down to checking in behind the scenes of LaunchBox over the last week and what we've been working on and all that good stuff. Sometimes we're testing out LaunchBox. Sometimes we are doing a number of things with LaunchBox. Sometimes we're putting out a release or putting out a newsletter or doing a whole bunch of other stuff that you guys get to see behind the scenes. And then we go into some heavy discussions. Might discuss some features, might go through your features, but throughout all of that, we're always answering any of your questions. So if you come to the stream and happen to be around while I'm around streaming, you can ask your burning questions about LaunchBox, whether you're having technical difficulties, whether you're wondering about a specific feature, or you want to learn about a specific feature. Yeah. You have not known about this. We are broadcasting. Are you on any? You're on our forums, right? What you can do, you have Discord as well. So if you're on our Discord server, you could see that there's events planned. You can subscribe to them if you want. I'm not really sure how that works. We also post on the official LaunchBox announcement on Discord. So like you can see that there's an events here. And on the announcement, I think you can subscribe to this channel, and then we post when we're starting. On our forums, there's a post that I'm using here that you can follow. So I've locked this post. It is under Community Corner, live streams by the LaunchBox team. And you can follow it if you want. And I will post it, and then you get kind of a notification. Or if you're here already, you can just follow the Twitch channel. What else do? We post on X, Facebook, and I feel like I'm missing one whenever that we hit the live button. We do it twice a week. You, Let's All Game, might actually like the Tuesday stream with Josh. He jumps into more technical stuff, the coding stuff. He's last week was working on plugins. I think he's worked on plugins for a number of weeks, but he's also done other things. He was working on a single sign-on service. He was working on a whole bunch of other things to do with the apps. One week he was finalizing the XEMU plugin that I believe is live in our plugin manager. Kind of did a soft launch. It'll be included in the next version of LaunchBox for people that want to set up. Oh, okay. That's a fun. I was in the middle of building LaunchBox and I didn't quite build it properly as the stream was starting. So let me see if I can do that. Yeah, so as if you want to import a Microsoft Xbox or something like that, we will now download XEMU for you. The plugin basically contains the information or the code that will download the emulator for you. I believe it also downloads like the hard drive file for you and sets that up automatically. And then also has the logic around the dependency files feature that we have. So it adds the ability to inform users if they are missing a dependency file, and allows you to easily add that in. And I believe we tested that on a couple streams last week, the week before. And hope you're doing well, Andre, and not getting bogged down in all things Android like normal. All right, this says that we've successfully built LaunchBox. You guys can see that we've been heavily testing LaunchBox for Android. So before this stream and for a lot of the week, we were testing and more testing LaunchBox for Android. You can see I have two different LaunchBox for Android emulators up right now that I was using for testing. We have just released beta 3, which should solve a number of crashes for users, as well as getting our scope storage implementation in there. What does scope storage even mean? It's Android's, I think it started in Android 11, but they locked down their Android. Yeah, not enough tests. I think I've been doing it on 6 different devices. And we got to the point where all 6 are completely fine, booting up fine, all the crashes are done. But well, like when we learned that there was a potential crash with our crash reporting system, where we've been using this crash reporting system, App Center, for at least a year, maybe longer than that, I'm assuming, Andre. And it's been great, working fine. And then it's owned by Microsoft, and Microsoft said they are discontinuing it, and they're going to turn it off March 31st. And good luck, everybody. And we said, oh crap, we're going to have to find another crash reporting system that we can use. And so we found one. We implemented it into beta 1 maybe of this release. And little did we know that their software that we had to integrate had a bug where if you try to send a crash report into that system, there is a chance that it would crash. The crash reporting system crashing on itself. And Chunky, I know you were potentially fell victim to that. And so when is the ETA? If you're talking about the beta 3 is out, and so you can go and get yourself a copy of that, and please let me know. If you can do it now, you can let me know right now if that solves the problem for you. Go to the beta thread. I know you know where it is, and you can, I think I wrote like some simple instructions on the most recent post, and provided a link that should work to beta 3. Yeah, it should work. If you just want to download the APK and then install on your device. It also says what we were working on. So we worked on the beginning of this scope storage thing, which makes it that if your device is on Android 11 and above, which I'm assuming most devices are these days, because Android 11 is quite old at this point, you are now beholden to Google's security sandbox thing that they call scope storage, which basically makes it so apps have less ability to talk to essential things, system things on your computer, right? And they said, we're going to do this so that apps don't have the ability to really take control of your device, all in the pursuit of malicious apps causing problems. So this was their solution. Of course, the downfall is, well, apps can't talk to your device or other apps anymore, like as well, which is a problem for front ends when they need access to your files, and then they need access to send that information to another complete other app. Those are the two requirements for a front end, and so they basically Google said, okay, we'll allow you guys to do it, but you're gonna have to go through this new file system, and users are gonna have to decide whether they want to provide you with permissions, and they're gonna have to set the exact folder that they want you to have permissions for, and then that will create this encrypted path that your app can use, that then we can send to the app with specific launching arguments. It's fairly convoluted, as you might expect, but we are in the process of figuring that out. And so we're using a really old app that we know has this issue. The app is called Drastic. And to be honest, if you're still using Drastic on your Android device, yeah, don't use it. The developer has notoriously given up developing it for many years, and at this point they got scared and took it off of the App Store, or there was some problem. They didn't want to. I mean, like most apps, like most developers, Google tends to keep asking for more and more from them, and developers kind of get scared off eventually. Yeah, okay. We are good. We are good to go, Chunky. So anyway, so I don't know, Chunky, what do you use for Nintendo DS emulation? You can see here, you have this new scope storage permission section. We're not done the scope storage implementation yet. Just kind of like be warned. Hopefully that will be done in the next beta. But for now, we have something in there. You can see here, it sets the scope storage permissions, but I'm fairly certain that if I were to launch this, it would not work yet. And this is also zipped. That's fun. Are all these zipped? Where did I get these files? This one's not. That's interesting. This one is. Alright, so that's the scope storage. Ooh. And it will basically just open up Drastic at this point on this device. But we're getting close to solving this problem. I believe that we learned that if you were to take this exact code, this custom arguments, that we developed that custom emulator with code feature, this should work. Right? This is basically pointing and getting all the arguments for this Drastic emulator in there. It is not working. It's possible because I have to re-import these games, something that we learned. But anyway, that is what we're working on. So by the end, we will have all of that available. All right, I did build this out, right? So this should open now properly. It is not. It's quite possible I did not actually build it. Yeah, I did not. Let's try again. If I can close this up. So how is everybody doing today? It is a gloomy day here in Canada, but warm. All the snow has melted here, and I am close, or I'm in the GTA in Toronto, Ontario, and interesting why this is not disappearing for me. It's probably because I have way too much stuff going on and using literally all my memory. There we go. Oh, wonderful comment. Alright, I should not be doing it that way. I feel like I'm in the wrong the wrong chat to do what I need to do. So I'm going to open my own chat to ban this guy. Interesting. Twitch does not allow you to view chat. Huh. Yeah. As I fumble through figuring out why I can't see the chat. It is wonderful. Is it me, or has Twitch decided that they're not going to show chat that happened before you logged into your account now? That's new. Oh well. Yeah, they are slowly degrading Twitch, little by little. Maybe they're just falling under the pressure of their own hard drives. Quick question. Is there a way to change the startup screen to LaunchBox for Android? I don't believe so. Like that's a static startup page that would need to be adjusted. But any reason why you would want to adjust that? I assume you mean the background image and maybe even the LaunchBox logo, and but leaving the text that says, "This is what we're doing." Here's the process of what's happening when we're opening LaunchBox for Android. All right, did I build this? No. Yeah, so in Big Box, I believe the two options are you can turn off the splash screen logo, or you can add a startup video. I think those are the two options in Big Box, if I remember correctly. I could be not remembering that first one right. So in that sense, are you asking you want startup videos in LaunchBox for Android? So any customizations. I'm a little hesitant on that. So I wouldn't want to theme that page, because that could give users the ability to stop the app from opening if they theme it improperly. So it would have to be restricted to something. You're saying an image, but there's not really an image on that page. I feel like there's two images on that page. And so you could potentially be adding an image, and that could be an image that doesn't quite fit, if that makes sense, to the text. Like maybe it washes out the text. We wouldn't be able to tell. Be like, oh, well, you've got a white background, therefore we should change the text color to black or something. So as long as people know that, we could be like, okay, you can apply one image, and well, if we did like a whole theme thing, the best we could do is it opens up LaunchBox and it provides you an error right away. Be like, okay, there's an error in the code that you're using, in the theme code, but we are going to fall back to the startup, to like the default page. So we can do that, and then there would be like the default page behind it booting up while you have this error on your screen. And so if we wanted that to not happen, we could just make it an image that stretches to the device. Now, obviously, that doesn't 100% work, because you've got portrait mode, you've got landscape mode, you've got extra wide screens, you've got 4x3 screens. That image is going to stretch. I mean, which is what it currently does, right now. There's like an image, and that image is going to stretch and not look great on all those different aspect ratios. You can make the image like a uniform to fill, so it fills the available space, but it doesn't stretch the image. So in that, the downfall is that the image itself would become cropped, and if you don't have a big enough image, it's going to end up becoming very blurry in certain aspect ratios. So there's that issue. or you've decided that you're going to make this image, and that image is going to be like really cool for, I don't know, you're going to like put things in it that's reliant on positioning, and that position is going to end up not being correct in all the different aspect ratios. So people would be hard pressed doing something like that. I mean, the good news about, let's say we did like a theming engine, if you were good enough at theming, it wouldn't be too hard to reposition the image that you want to use for all the different aspect ratios. But you can imagine not everyone's going to do this, right? Because it's much easier to just in the theme say, place image here, not place image here, but in landscape portrait mode, landscape ultra wide screen mode, do this, and in landscape, full frame mode, do this, and in this, and then there would be like a list of either 4 or 6 different aspect ratios that you'd have to count for, that you would have to program in for that, basically. And the chances of someone doing that is probably pretty low. So then another option would be let's make it so that the user has the option to set an image for a particular aspect ratio. So then we'd have like 6 options. Display this image for ultra wide landscape, and display this image for such and such and such, and display this image, and like you would have to have already formatted 6 different images for that startup, and then you have to apply it to each one individually. And then you can you imagine doing that and then going, oh, I made a mistake on this one part of the image, and you have to create 6 more images up and update them just to make that change. But I would love to just modernize that page. That wouldn't be out of the question. And I've got some ideas on how to do that. But yeah, that's sort of why. This seemed to succeed again, so unless I'm doing something wrong, this should open. I finally hit the right buttons. Just like build our own app. All right. I did. I hit the right buttons this time. Today, okay, there's 2 things, of course, to what I do at LaunchBox. One of them is we try to keep a pulse on the community, do support emails, do read the Discord, read the forums, try to get a sense of what people are having issues with. A lot of the issues are user-specific issues, and so, but it's hard to tell whether they are, right? Maybe we made a change and it inadvertently affected something that we didn't even touch. And so there was one today where someone said they ran a LaunchBox update and their Amiga WHD load files were no longer launching. And of course, to me, when I hear that, I'm like, okay, an update can't affect that information. Hey, D. Welcome in. Right, the update itself can affect the program's files, but it can't affect your data files. So already, I'm like, you're already skeptical. Okay, well, LaunchBox's update, unless we affected the launching capabilities of LaunchBox, we can't affect how that app is being, how your files are being sent to the emulator. Another thing is that maybe their emulator got an update and that changed stuff. That could happen. Right? There was like one version of Dolphin where they like really messed it up, and for people that were using that one version, they broke basically command line launching in that version. And so one day I remember like we woke up and everybody's complaining that we broke Dolphins, like we broke Nintendo, GameCube, and Wii launches, like, and we didn't even have an update, but it broke, and it took us a while to like have to deduce, okay, well, Dolphin broke their application, and if you're using that version, you're gonna have to download. Sounds simple enough. It just, the amount of time for us to get to that point so that we can tell people about that kind of takes time away from anything else we do. So this was something, I wouldn't say similar, but they were saying they had WHD load files, and now the LaunchBox update has broken launching those games. So luckily I have WHD load files, because imagine if I didn't have that, I'd be like, what are WHD load files? And I'd have to research what those are, because Commodore Amiga can be a little bit of a, it's almost like MAME. Like if you knew absolutely nothing about MAME and I would tell you, okay, research Commodore Amiga emulation, you'd be like wondering why it's so complicated. Like, why can't it just be I have these files and I just want to put them into the emulator? Anyway, so I've already done that work. We've already like have a system in place that allows us to import these files, although I would love to review that work, because I'm kind of seeing that it definitely broke at some point somewhat, so that'll be reviewed. But in saying that, they were saying I launch a game and they're seeing the BIOS window basically. It's WHD load that has the problems. Their files aren't greatly named. It's not like no intro standardized naming conventions. Anyway, so I launch a game like this, and it works. So what do you tell somebody when you launch a game and the game works? And so I just had to go through the process of explaining, like, this is what could be wrong, maybe. Like, I don't know, like you could, like the way that you would troubleshoot an issue. Like if anybody came to you, or if you had this problem, you're like, this game does not work, or they'll say, they might be like, if you were like generalizing, my whole LaunchBox build doesn't work. Well, we can't solve your whole LaunchBox build, but we could solve like a game. Let's look at a game. And so if I was going to look at this game, I'd be like, okay, well, right now I click the game. One thing, if you're using the default theme, the fact that there's a play button there indicates that it can find the file. So we know right away that the file exists. If the file did not exist, this would show up as unavailable. I believe the play button would disappear. So I know that this file exists. Then I can go to the emulation station and see, okay, it's trying to launch to RetroArch. I edit RetroArch. I know RetroArch exists, especially if you try to play the game and RetroArch is opening, even if it's not playing that game. Then I can go to the associated platform section and be like, okay, Commodore Amiga is trying to launch this core. The status is indicating I have the core. Like right here would say the core is missing or something like that. And it's not. So this looks right. The core is there because it's an option in this drop-down menu. If this drop-down menu is basically just listing out everything available in your cores folder, in the RetroArch folder version that you're pointing to, then in the dependency file section, I go to Commodore Amiga, and see that this is sort of grouped together. The exclamation mark means that this emulator is indicated that this group is required, and one of these following items are required from this group. That's why they're grouped together. Now, luckily, I got them all. It's like, okay, these are fine. The green, and for people that don't know how this dependency files system works, if you have no file, then this will end up being red. If you have a file, but the MD5 hash doesn't match on that file, it would turn out yellow. And if both match, it turns green. So at this point, I know that based on the requirements that these files exist and that they are the correct version of these files. They're not like some old BIOS file that's been replaced or something that has problems, which has happened to me. Sega Saturn is a big one. If you haven't checked your Sega Saturn BIOS here, definitely do. So if any of them, if you're going through any of your dependency files section and you find that one of them is like yellow, you might want to solve that for yourself. Like you can see here, I don't have this file. So if I were to play a Sega Naomi 2 game, it would not work. So at this point, I'm fairly certain that if I play a game, it would work for this platform. Yeah. I had a problem with my Sega Saturn games where it would work, but like the startup screen and the game was a little distorted a little bit. There were like these weird green blotches, and I just thought that the Sega Saturn emulation just wasn't up to par. And then when we implemented this system, 100% realized it was my BIOS file. And so got a new BIOS file, and it solved the problem right away. Anyway, so what are we doing here? We have a feature that's coming out very soon. We've been working on a number of things on Windows. A couple of them are related to crashes. So if you do see, we know we have a number of crashes happening in Big Box right now. One is related specifically to VLC. We've heavily tested this for a very long time on many machines. And there's a bug where, because of our update to .NET 9, the old VLC wrapper stuff that we're using is causing some sort of lockup issue inside of Big Box, where Big Box locks up but doesn't show us why it's locking up. Even trying to debug it, all that stuff. It's just like blind, which usually kind of means that it's outside. I mean, we're theorizing at this point it's outside of our code, right? It's like inside of the library, the wrapper that we're using, something that we don't really have too much access to, and harder to deduce. And so we know that if you just switch to Windows Media Player inside of the Big Box options, solves that problem for you. And what's funny is that Windows Media Player used to have a huge memory leak in it, the way that it was in older .NETs. In this version of .NET, it's like completely solved, like smooth as butter. And it's probably, at this point, it should be the recommended video player for you to use. Like, this media element included in .NET 9 is very nice. Yeah, yeah. Windows is getting us to go, everybody to go in that direction, which I don't mind. Right. The only reason why Windows Media Player wasn't the main one in LaunchBox and Big Box for so long is because they just kept ignoring it. Oh, you're a Linux user? But somehow still using LaunchBox. Anyway, so there you go. Through Wine. How's that going for you? I could see the application working fine. How does Wine work between applications and the launch arguments and stuff that you have to do through command line? Like if there's no command line interface, how does that work for you? Unless you're just emulating Windows. Oh, nice. Okay, so you have to set up your own scripts. That makes sense. Nice. I would love to see those scripts at one point. Very interested in seeing how all that functions. And you've done all this work for it, so I'm sure that it's all that uniqueness would pay off if we can see how all that stuff is operating. So you're launching it into Linux versions of the application, of the emulators, which is really cool. Ah, okay. Nice. So you include, I mean, you would have to have included in your Redream stuff. Which, for anybody that wants to, in our download section, Let's All Game here has released this Redream per game VMUs for people that use Redream and want to have per game save buckets, I guess you'd want to call it. Nice. Available under third-party applications and plugins. That's cool. Yeah, make a video. Send it to me when you can. All right, so what are we working on in LaunchBox space other than those bugs and a few more small quality of life features? We are adding a media management section that allows users to, allows two groups of users. It allows users to download in a non-destructive way media packs that can be then swapped out on the fly. Media packs, and we're starting off small. So we're starting off with badges, platform icons, platform clear logos, which is probably the biggest one, and these new controller input graphics that will be available in the Big Box default theme. And you'll be able to download these and switch them on the fly. And the system is under Tools, Manage, LaunchBox, Themes, and Media. So we're hijacking the theme manager to also include media. You can see here at the top, there's now a new type combo box that basically allows us to list out all the different types of media that can be uploaded and available inside of LaunchBox. From a content creator standpoint, the goal is to get all of that wonderful media that you guys are creating and posting over on the forums to have that actually available inside of LaunchBox itself. LaunchBox itself, so that's the goal. And you guys can kind of be here. Like, let's take a look. Well, that was... Oh, I've got an update. Okay. So let's say I want to switch out the badge pack. Right now, the way that the system would work, you upgrade to this version. We take your badges. You do got to get your theme in there sometime. Just send me a message if you need help with that. Reviewing your code and going through it and optimizing and all that stuff. I should have some time. But we would love to have that on the theme manager. But for this, let's say you had a custom set of badges that you've been using for all these years. We will take all of those badges and create a pack called the Legacy Conversion Pack, badge pack. And that's now your pack that you've had in LaunchBox forever. And then we assign it and you're using it. But let's say you decided, hey, I want to try out some of these other packs. Well, you no longer have to destroy your old pack to install this new pack, which is what you currently have to do. You can just be like, hey, I kind of want to try this white outline pack. This will not be orange when the live version goes on. This basically means it's waiting for me to approve it. So I go, let's apply it. And I now have the ability to apply badges and all media just for LaunchBox or just for Big Box or for both. So in this case, let's just do LaunchBox, right? Now you'll see that now this one's applied to LaunchBox and this one's just applied to Big Box. Once I hit close, all of my badges, you can just see there, have now switched to this white outline version. And it's really that simple. The more badges that get added, the more that you can try out. You can have multiple badge packs installed on your machine, swap them in and out at your leisure. Maybe in a few months you might find a new one, swap it out. It'll be that simple. You go there, you'll see any new badges, you download it and hit apply. Those badges now get applied here. They get applied here. I believe they're getting applied there. Yeah, they're getting applied here. They're getting applied to any place where the code basically reads, just use the user's badge. The only place it wouldn't be applied is if a theme developer has decided, hey, I've got my own set of badges. I'm going to force you to use my theme specific badges. And so you can actually do that in a theme if you want. You can kind of like override a user's options. That will still use the theme specific options for obvious reasons. You see, it's using the outline one for Steam, and it's showing the controllers here in this corner. Same thing for platform clear logos. So like these right here, when I click on a logo, or in Big Box and any wheels for platforms, people can create their own packs, and you can find them again in here. So there's a platform clear logo section. You can see there's already a number of packs. Now what I've done is with Dan Patrick's blessing, I've taken all of his packs, at least the ones that make sense to use, and placed them in our system for you to download them. And so let's say I wanted to use these white logos. And so I've already downloaded them in my build, and I will apply them to LaunchBox. And as soon as I hit close, the next time I load any screen, it's now using these white platform clear logos, which he has painstakingly made. Yeah, they're all the white logo now, which is just really cool. You don't have to, for people that use silver, like those silver clear logos, ring logos, or the black ring logos, or you've made your own pack. You can still have that pack. We'll be converting all that stuff into a legacy clear logo pack, and then it's just a few clicks to try something else without losing that work. And then maybe somebody decides they're going to wrap all of that work, all those silver ring logo pack, and upload it to our server for people to enjoy. And that would just be a simple click to apply that to your LaunchBox build if you want to try it out. So it's fairly easy to use your own pack. To top that off, with clear logos in particular, let's say you found a pack and you really like it, but there's maybe an image that this pack doesn't have a clear logo for, or let's use that example. Let's say the pack you're using doesn't have a clear logo. And this could apply to everything. So let's say a pack you're using, like a badge pack you're using, doesn't have a specific badge, or all that stuff. What we do is the default old set of badges or platform clear logos or platform icons would then be used for that particular platform or badge, just so that you always have something no matter what's missing in a pack. But for platform clear logos in particular, so let's say like this computer one, there's no white logo for that, because Dan Patrick never really created those for these packs. This was a platform specific pack. So this category, nothing for it. You can still override the pack by adding an image. I don't have one, so I'm just gonna use some random image here and use this clear logo override section. So now you are using that white pack, but you as a user decided, I want this particular item, this logo, to be used instead of that one pack. That's how you would do it. And now you're using that one logo. So you could be using a pack and still have specific images that you want to use on top of that pack to fill in the blanks. And then, it's not that hard for you to create your own pack. So if you decided you like certain images from one pack, certain images from another pack, and you want to combine your own pack, the way that you could do it is, I believe it's inside of media packs. So inside of LaunchBox images, media packs, you'll see that there's all the different types that we currently provide, plus the override folder. And let's say you wanted to create your own pack, you could just, create Feyran's pack of greatness. And then let's say I wanted, some of this here, but maybe I wanted these dark ones for the platforms, for part of them, or whatever one that you want. You're creating your own packs here. And it would be I didn't actually test this beforehand. So there it is. So it should be that simple. Now I've created my own set of my own pack, and I can, set it to LaunchBox, set it to Big Box, and now it's using that pack. So like for arcade, I believe I was using the colored ones, But for platforms, I'm now using the black ones, and you can customize it to your liking, basically. This is what is coming. So the pack that I don't know, which packs would you guys be using for clear logos? Would you even change, or would you continue using the one that you are using? I would probably change to these light colored logos. I really like these ones. Essentially, it's the logo, the way that... So if you know what Dan Patrick did, he went out and he researched logos for all of the different platforms that kind of exist, like almost virtually every single one. And what he found was, throughout the lifespan of a console or system, they used multiple different kinds of logos, whether on their boxes, different variations of boxes, through their marketing materials, like all sorts of different things that he's found. And so what people might remember a logo looking like is not the only way that that system was ever marketed. It's just what we're used to seeing inside of LaunchBox or whatever front end that you're using, or just over the years on the internet, right? Nintendo Entertainment System, they had this logo, but that wasn't the only logo that they had. Right? What was actually written on the console itself, for example? They had a logo on the Nintendo Entertainment System, and that logo was different than this logo. Right? So why aren't we using that logo, for example, to indicate that... Oh, these are really bad images, but... here's one. Open image. All right. So we're actually all used to this logo, but hey, we're using this logo instead. So this could be a viable logo, as an example. And so he's going through all of this. Another one that I remember he was painstakingly looking at was the Sega... which one was it? I think it was the Game Gear, I'm going to say. I remember we had discussions about this, where the logo that we're all used to is the logo that's on the console itself. Right, so we remember this logo. Right, this is like a popular one. But this was also a logo. Does anybody remember what the logo looked like on the box? So we kind of did like a reverse here, where we're now using the logo that's on this console, on this handheld, whereas with the Nintendo Entertainment System, we're not using the logo that's on the handheld or that's on the console. Anybody remember what the Game Gear box logo looked like throughout the years? All right, we had this one where it's listed right here as Game Gear. I think that's more of a newer one. There was this one. So we could have been using this one. I don't know if this one's region specific. There was this one. I believe this one is region specific. This one's the Japanese one. And then there's this one. Oh, I can't even get it big. Which is like this whole big bordered Game Gear thing. And I believe this one was released in North America. Right, so throughout the lifespan of a system, there will be multiple different kinds of logos. And so he was falling into this trap of like, which is the right logo? And of course the answer is they're all the right logo. So then which one do we use? Why was there this decision that we're going to use this one over that one? And for every single type of console. And so what he ended up deciding was, I'm just going to make them all. And so he made them all. So if you wanted to build, so it's not as simple as downloading his pack and applying it to LaunchBox, right? It never was that simple. If you were a person that really wanted to have control over what that logo looks like. So he would include, 4, 5, 6 different logos for just one platform. And so if you wanted to use his pack, you would download his pack, and then you would have to decide which logo on a per console basis, on a per system basis, and decide which one you want to use, and then create your own pack out of it. So just by saying, hey, I've got a Dan Patrick pack here, which I do, and if I go down to Sega Game Gear, I'm using this logo. Well, you could create your own Dan Patrick pack and be using completely different logos, and that would be fine. And then you could actually then upload what you want to see to our system with a completely different pack that has customized to your liking, and then maybe somebody else likes what you like and wants to see the packs that you're seeing. Yeah, so there's a lot in that he probably didn't realize when he first started that project, and he kind of went down that rabbit hole, and he spent a very long time in that hole, and like all things, probably burnt himself out. But I do think I talked to him recently, and he's feeling a little better about that. I hope you didn't burn yourself out. Let's all game. I hope you didn't burn yourself out. Right? Yeah, his logos were worth it. And now, hopefully with this update, so what we did when he was going through that project is that we worked with him, and he created sort of like this white outline version for us, and that's what you guys see. Like we used part of the logos that we had, plus incorporated his logo sets to fill in any of the blanks, and we got this like massive set that was very specific to LaunchBox, which will still be available under what we did was we took all the packs, the default packs that we had, and turned them into what we call nostalgic packs. They're now, LaunchBox is so old that they themselves are nostalgic. The app itself is nostalgic. And so there'll be these packs called the nostalgic platform badges, nostalgic platform clear logos. And that pack will still be available under there. And if you're using that pack when you upgrade, or you're using those logos when you upgrade, you'll still be using those logos. But then now you have the ability to upgrade to packs that don't have those white outlines, right? And the reason why those white outlines exist is because they work. Yeah, well, at what point does something become retro, ED? Is it 10 years? Is it 15 years? It's different now, I feel, than it was in the 80s and 90s. Because you had the Nintendo Entertainment System. When did that feel retro? And like to me, that felt retro in the 90s. But the system, at least in North America, only came out, in the mid 80s. So, like, by 10 years, it was retro. It was retro feeling. People were getting rid of it. I was already in the, like, collector phase of that console. I was already going to stores and, like, finding them in the bins, or in, I think there's one store they had it in, like, their glass case with, like, boxes of Nintendo games. And I would go there almost every day and just, like, sort through them and pick out ones that I wanted. It was already at that stage. But now, I don't know, do you consider, like, a Windows game that came out in 2015 retro? Is The Witcher 3 retro? Because The Witcher 3 came out in 2012 or 2013? 2015. I was completely off. So yeah, it came out in 2015. Is that retro now? The Xbox 360, everything on that, is that retro? Is Skyrim retro? We're going to call it a retro video game. I feel like that's a little debatable. I feel like it's, but only because we are still, like, there's a little bit of a difference, right? Everyone's still using a machine that can play that game. Right? If you're on Windows, or you're on, like, a PC of some kind, through Wine, you can play that game. Hardware limitations aren't there like they were back then. We didn't move on. So I guess retro, the concept of it will just, in essence, feel different in this modern day. Like, that time period where every single release was a major milestone of, like, hardware and software and development tools. Kind of we're past that at this point. Yeah, and then with the re-releases, does that make, okay, the original game is retro, but then the remake is what? What is that category now? Everything's getting a remake. It doesn't make the game non-retro, I would assume. But it makes the new game retro adjacent? I don't know. AI. Yeah, AI knows everything. It refers to styles, designs, or items that evoke a sense of nostalgia. Well, that's great. Retro equals nostalgia. It does mean that retro is different to different age groups. And so I'm kind of wondering, because there are, I don't know who falls, if anybody here falls into this category, but if you are if you were born in the late 90s or early 2000s, you would consider probably the PlayStation 3, Xbox 360 era as that old console that you had when you were a kid. If you had it, or the one that you remember seeing on TV when you were a kid or something, or being advertised at the stores. And so that is retro for you. That is old for you. But what we don't have, like if we for the older group, right? ED, not naming names. There was no video game retro stuff. Like video games were new. So there was no concept of you saying, "Oh yeah, this is a game." No, I'm not pointing names to anybody. There's no finger pointing happening here. There was no video games that were old at that point, right? There's no concept of retro video games, and therefore we were kind of part of this generation where this whole retro video game concept is foreign to us, or it's just brand new. We're like the first generation of retro video game nostalgia. If we're just looking at that subset of retroness. So, to people now, how are they looking at, like, you would think that there'd be like categories of retro video gameness, like for the people that were born in the late 90s and early 2000s, PS3 is retro. But what is Atari 2600 to those people? It can't also be just retro. Like, those don't fit in the same category. Like, yeah, we need a new word. It was just ancient. It should just be in museums now to take a look at. But not actually ever use or play. Right, so over time, people will be less likely to want to have these things, want to do these things in the way that it currently is. Right? Like but then there will still be probably a smaller subset of people that still want that. If you look at, I don't know, baseball cards or something like that as an example of collectibles, and you've got the cards from like the 1940s or 1950s, like the first few cards, nobody has nostalgia for those cards. It's not like you were like, back when I was young, I remember having this card or these kinds of sets. But there are still people that actively want them. So I'm assuming that there will still people that will actively want them, want to learn about them, want to know about them, even though they didn't grow up with them or have any nostalgia for them. Right? Just like video games will get to that point, right? I know what a video game is. I know what games are. I know what controllers are. But this one back then, I don't have any nostalgia for it, but it's really cool that existed, and I want to learn about it, and I might want to collect it, and I might want to play a game from it. It'll end up being something like that eventually, right? Anyway. Yeah, see, like they actively enjoy. It's more like the people that enjoy that genre of thing, and they want to learn about its history. They want to, like, it's still their hobby. Like if you're a video game collector and your nostalgia is for the PlayStation 4 or the Nintendo Switch, you would still have value in being like, oh, Nintendo, they created this system that I've never played before. They did something like the Game & Watch. That's really cool. Let me learn about it and find out about it. And the games will live on kind of in that sense. Well, yeah, you do. We're old. But as a company like LaunchBox, you kind of have to think about that. Well, this generation is coming. What are they wanting out of nostalgia? And is it the same as what we're wanting out of nostalgia? Maybe it's different. But the last thing that I'll mention about this coming update is that now that we find ourselves in a world where you could potentially have multiple platform clear logos for one system, and they are specific to that pack, right? It's not just you have one clear logo here, change it out, right? We find ourselves in a situation where what do we do in this edit platform playlist slash category window where we're displaying the clear logo here? And what we decided, what you'll see here is first we say, okay, as you're navigating through, you can see that I've got a whole bunch here of the same clear logos, but here it's telling me which pack it's from. So this clear logo is from the dark black logos pack. And I can kind of see that black on black means that what a beautiful logo there, right? There's a nice one from the Legacy Conversion Pack. The light colors one is here. So we're basically listing them all out. You can see which pack they're from. But how do you know which one is actually in use? Well, now we've got these little icons here that basically say this one's currently in use for Big Box. This one's currently in use for LaunchBox. So as you change, and then we have a little link here that basically says, hey, we know you can't manage this anymore here. If you want to manage your logos, click here and open the theme and manager window. Right, and you can go down here and you can say, you know what, I don't really want, this one here to be the pack that is used for LaunchBox. I really wanted these white ones used for LaunchBox. So you make the change, you hit OK, and now you can see that this one, this light colored one, is now being used just for Big Box. And if I find the light white logos, you can see here that it's being used for LaunchBox. And that is how we decided to solve this particular problem. On top of the fact that if you didn't want to use any of these, you can still override that with your own image. And that's what we've been working on over the last week and probably subsequent weeks. Now, for users, for content creators that want to provide us or want to provide us with their packs, we will be writing up a little tutorial on how to use that, probably video and in writing. We will also be putting links to the page where you have to go to, but basically it's our website /media, if I remember correctly, and here you can submit your media packs. So we'll have links to this on the forums. We'll have links to this. We'll probably publish an article tutorial about this, and we'll have a video about this by probably we'll get RetroPython to create a video for this. On the real Solly, welcome in. Yeah, so are there two options for the Panasonic 3DO? There are many options, probably not here. So these are packs. There's only one option per pack, but you can have many options throughout the different packs, what we're talking about. But if you're just looking for like different options that you can choose from, check out Dan Patrick's logo pack on the forums. So if you were on the forums and you went to the download section and you found his pack, probably right here in the highest rated, because it very much deserves that, you will see that I don't know if he lists them here, but you would probably want to download this one. This one's a good one. It's a good balance between size and just quality. And what you'll find is that inside of this pack, he will have an amazing amount of different kinds of logos for different systems. More than likely, we'll have multiple different versions of that Panasonic one between, and there'll be multiple of them in his black set. That's what you'd want to do. It surprises you they're right behind him. Shouldn't surprise you. Your theme people have gravitated to and love what you're doing. So yeah, you don't have to be surprised. And you can see here that you can, I mean, it's very tiny, but each button will be like platform clear logo. There'll be one button for each of the different types that you can upload. And then when you click it, you'll be asked a bunch of questions. This is using your forum username, so it'll ask you to sign into your forums account if you needed to. And then down here, you pick a name, pick a version for it. If you have it on the forums, you can set a support URL. If you have like a Patreon or a Buy Me Coffee link, you can type it in here and it will show up inside of the this window here. And then you can have your descriptions, requirements, credits, changes for this particular version, and you can upload screenshots, even a video of your pack in action, and then you can upload your pack. So then really it's about how do you format your pack, and the way that you would probably want to do that is just by example. So you would be going under the LaunchBox images media pack section, and if you wanted to create a badges pack, you would be going in here, checking a pack out. Probably not that one. Checking one of the packs out, and you would be creating it. That is so funny. You'd be creating it in the way that you see it here, minus this version file, which is automatically generated in there. Same with the same with the clear logos. Clear logos have a folder for each one of these categories, platforms, and playlists. And the controller inputs, I haven't talked about this one, but this will allow you in LaunchBox, if you haven't added this to your theme, you might want to think about adding this into your theme in the future. But there are ways to now have controller input graphics. So these graphics that are in the default theme. And thank you very much, Tear Bear, for the follow. If you have any questions, please let us know here, and we'll be happy to help. But these files inside, these graphics inside of the LaunchBox, the big box default theme, they've been there for a little while. They adjust to a user setting. So if a user has set up like a search button and they've decided to apply it to the select button on their controller, which is button 7 in Windows, it would display the select button on the bottom next to like search is now select, and it adjusts based on the user setting. And so the default theme has always had this capability in sort of like a theme specific state. The problem is, what if you're not using an Xbox controller? And so we tried to re-envision. This update will come with sort of like a re-envision widget element of that theme creators can use in their own app. On top of that, it now is going to work with this media section. And we're going to include, I think, packs for a minimum of Nintendo and PlayStation and this Xbox one, all in the same sort of white look. And so if you're using a PlayStation controller, go flip out to that PlayStation graphic and the default theme will adjust and use those graphics instead, and will still change depending on the things that you're choosing. I believe the default theme uses, it's like select, back, and search. I'm trying to think if there's potentially one more that I can't remember right now. But they will be adjusted depending on what you choose and what you like, what the user chooses. And you can, as a theme developer, implement that same kind of snippet of code and utilize the same system. All right, and then you can create your own packs and have people use them if you want. I can't remember, but I feel like we didn't, and this might be something that you would want to use, but we didn't go that far, have theme specific support. I don't know if we have that, where you could have theme override packs. And then I'm sure what you would want to do eventually is have platform specific theme override packs. Which is just like another layer. By the time we're done with any of these like media features, there's like a layer of 10 priority fallbacks or something like that. Check this folder for this image. Now check this folder for an image. Oh, it's not one there. Check this folder for an image. Check. I just keep like prioritizing back. But it'll exist. It's possible what might make sense is for us to basically say, here's a property, point this property to a theme specific folder, and we will use whatever's in there for those graphics. Above anything else. And then inside of that folder, we would have to develop a way to utilize platform specific versions of those. I don't know, maybe it would be something like that, but it's a lot of fallbacks, right? All the way down to the default pack, which in this case would probably just be the Xbox one. I'm also going to just personally include, this is very specific, if you have an Ultimate Legends, or is it called Legends Ultimate, arcade cabinet, I created a pack for my arcade cabinet, and I'll just be releasing that, probably under my own name. for people that also have that cabinet and those buttons are already all set up and ready to go and usable. Right? Themes themselves could just use them. To be honest, we wouldn't have to do all that work now that I think about that Let's All game. That might already work by just using the binding and then saying, if this is the binding that's being used, just point to this exact image for that particular view. You might be able to just do it that way. Or it's just hard-coded images for that one platform-specific view, and you're just using a binding that's changing the title or the file name of it to like button 7 or something, and you're just kind of saying, hey, if it's button 7, point to this folder and find button7.png, and that folder contains your Sega Genesis controller buttons. But if you want to do it that way, you have a lot of buttons to create. Also, if you want to do it that way, it kind of goes against what the concept of that controller thing is, which is, it's supposed to be used for that so that users can be able to know what buttons to press based on the controller that they're holding at that given time. So I could see how it would be really cool to be like, hey, for a Genesis one, make it look like, say, Genesis. So that might go against that concept. Just some thoughts. Of course, Chunky, you can ask as many Android questions as you want. Whenever a theme video plays, so I'm assuming you mean like a filter theme video and not a game theme video, it adds a title to your notifications for a LaunchBox media player. When you click it, nothing happens. So there's potentially in beta 3. Yeah, so we know about this. What ended up happening was we're using a new media player, media element, let's say, that's playing this stuff. And that element allows, for some reason, to be set. I mean, with Android, it kind of makes sense that you have the ability to play music or to play even videos and like a pop out or something like that. But let's just stick with music. You have the ability to like play audio even if the app is closed. Right, which makes sense. Let's say you're listening to music and you close the app and you're doing stuff. You still want that music to continue playing, and so there'll be like a notification thing that I think is a global notification that Android has that apps will utilize when music's playing. I use it all the time. Listen to audiobooks. And that's being used. That'll even like display on your screen, on your like lock screen and stuff like that. So it makes sense that it wants to do that. Now, the way that we're using the media element, I'm guessing that would not be beneficial for people, right? You don't want to continue hearing the platform audio of a platform video when the app is closed. So yeah, like Andre's saying, he's trying to look at how do we disable the default actions of Android and say, stop doing that, Android. Do something else. And that is what he's looking into. But I'll tell you that we very much wanted to get that beta out specifically for you to get out of that. Oh, and for anybody else that was experiencing that startup crash, but no, specifically for you to get you out of that crash And so we kind of said, okay, let's stop the work that we're doing and let's just put out what we have, knowing that what we put out solves that problem. So that's why I put in the notes, like, we're working on scope storage. It's kind of implemented, but it's not quite done because we just stopped working on it, knowing that we still had problems with it to get this beta out, so that there's other things that are in this beta track that we want people to test. Right? We want you to be there and test it. All sorts of things, like the orientation lock is in. We want you to test the orientation lock, make sure that it works. Make sure that the app is opening for a specific orientation. Like, we can even test it here. I don't know if it'll work on an emulator, to be honest, but I shouldn't have closed that. Let's see if it works on an emulator. I'd be very surprised. But down here, there's the orientation lock, and if I set it to portrait, whoa, it does work. So I close the application, it's going to be in landscape, and then it's going to switch to portrait. Oh, that's fun. Look at that. Now, I would assume that most people want it the other way. They have their phones, and their phones are set to portrait. Oh, isn't that fun? It did not adjust. Oh, that is funny. I wonder if I have it locked in a setting or something, and their actual setting isn't working. Is it orientation? Auto rotate screen. Okay. It's on. You're supposed to rotate. Alright. Is that better? Nope. I wonder if this is because I'm using this Nova launcher. I don't think it is. Anyway, that's not important. The important part is that it works. App-specific orientation lock. Anyway, so by the end of this, we'll have a bunch of emulators that didn't work that should work due to scope storage, and we're even going to try to see what happens if we can just allow, like, the goal is to make this self-sufficient. So if we can allow scope storage to work for just any emulator as an option, because scope storage, you don't. The problem with scope storage, that I'm not sure if I brought it up in this stream, I brought it up in last stream, is that it opens up. I don't know if I can get it to open up again, to be honest. Yeah, I can't. It opens up the scope storage file system that is not controller friendly. So everybody's got these controllers they're using, right? Like this one, and they're navigating around, and then we say, hey, set your folder, and you press OK, and now you're in a window that we're forced upon. Google makes us use that you can't use a controller to set permissions for, so you gotta like switch to the touchscreen. I guess for the most part, it's not something that 100% will get in the way for you, but for such a few amount of emulators that don't currently support front-end support, like, why are we adding scope storage to make the user experience so much worse for users when we don't have to? All right, so that's basically what I had down for what I've talked about over the behind the scenes stuff and what we've been doing. A lot of stuff also that is always ongoing here. And so expect like if you're new to Big Box and you wanted to, or you don't even know what Big Box is and you wanted to find out what it is, there's a video that's going to probably come out tomorrow that's going to be the first in a line of just simple tutorial videos for Big Box, and hopefully can get you in the mood for figuring out why does Big Box exist, what is it for, why are people using it, and gives you kind of a breakdown of that, followed by a second video about what are all the options, why do they exist, and what do they do. And then followed by a third video that's probably like, here's some advanced things that you probably didn't know about. That's right. The question specifically answers, why is Big Box so big? And LaunchBox not so big as Big Box. That's right. That's right. It's so that it can get more love. Now, question of the day for anybody that's here that wants to answer this. In your library, what's in your library right now? Is it 2D box front images, 3D box front images, or these 2.5D box image packs? If you opened LaunchBox right now, what would you be looking at? Oh, you can't say all the above. And you mean you got the 2D box fronts? Is that what you're saying? Like just like this. All right, so we got one. Two for 2D box fronts. More 2D box fronts. So you're happy with the 2D images. I mean, there's no Retro Frog here to defend his 2.5D box packs. Oh, and Joe going with the more advanced answer. You got the box front, a Steam poster, and arcade cabinets. That is interesting. So that means that you, and this wasn't the question, but that's an interesting answer. Uncheck all of these things and then check off box front, Steam poster, and arcade cabinets. All right, 3D carts, so like 3D models of carts. When we implemented the 3D boxes, we had like that was definitely a thought. Was maybe we can do like models of these 3D models of carts if this becomes like really popular and the performance is there. You get a smaller return on investment, right? Because even though they're there, they wouldn't be at the forefront of anything. theme developers could use it. It might be an option to change into, but it wouldn't be like the thing right in front of your face. Also, the way that we got away with boxes by saying, let's make the default just like a box shape and make it so that that box shape can dynamically change based on different events, different things that happen. Like if you have a spine image, we will adjust the size to the spine image. We're adjusting the size to the box image and like all that stuff. Like we're manipulating that box to make it look like a box. And then we can, like, now that we have established this sort of global look, we can now say which one do we want to add platform specific models to, you know. And we took like the jewel case and the big tall jewel case and the few others basically, and then we added, like, we went down that rabbit hole for a bit. And I don't know what we would do for carts. It would like, what would the generic cart be? We would have to probably invent one, I guess, or maybe 2 or 3. Well, CD, you know, for CD systems. A disc for maybe a I don't know, 5.25 floppy disk, but then also, you know, a hard floppy disk, and then also a generic cart, maybe. I don't know. You would have to make a list of these generic ones, and then we would have to tackle the very specific ones, which, to be honest, every single platform would require its own. So like, that work would be insurmountable until we get to the end of it. So like, I don't know. Would people be okay with us like heads down for 4 months as we build out 3D models for most but not all platforms? And then after we build it, figure out ways that people can use it. I would love to leave it to the community. If we did that, that could definitely help a lot. If we could develop, and I wonder who would be able to do this. So we would have to call all 3D model people and be like, this is how it works. Can you create a model that looks like this? Then kind of like, what do you do if somebody creates a model and it's not quite exactly what you need, or it's completely terrible and you got to tell the guy, this is completely terrible. We can't use this. It would be cool to have a system, and we've talked about for arcade cabinets, where we know arcade cabinets are basically like cabinets. So if somebody had an arcade cabinet, can they then just like have a complete textured packed cabinet, all 3D model like, and then upload it themselves or apply it to their games themselves? And then, hey, there's that game has one. And now do that for 3,000 arcade games. But yeah, the way that it kind of works, the one thing that I think is probably stopping that, because we did have a discussion about this on a previous stream, is that labels are not part of our database right now. Right, so you would have, let's say, Nintendo 64, and then you would create like a space for where the label would go on that model. And then everybody just goes, during the process, they're just downloading those labels, and we just apply them automatically. And so they just all are available. But since we don't actually have like label, we have cart. And because the carts aren't like part of the same pack, we can't guarantee that the image size or the aspect ratio will be the same. So we couldn't just like crop out an image in a logical way. And so there probably would have to be labels, a new label image type, and then we would have to allow people to include them, and then so that would have to get populated. And then we've got the problem of creating these different, there's a lot of steps, that's what I'm going to say, that are heavily reliant on the community for this to become a feature that people would actually want to use. And that's why we kind of stuck with just the model of the box. I would say that the first thought that we did have, especially when we were creating something like these jewel cases, is okay, let's leave the inside of the jewel case there just in case we ever could open up that case and here is sitting a CD for that game that could pop out. Wouldn't that be cool, right? And so if you look at these models, you could see that if there is no front box, there's like it's sitting there, that a CD could be in there. Oh, it's good. It's good to hear that you can even see the back of it. We paid a guy to create these models, and what we found a number of things. One, he could create them really fast, and we were pretty happy with what he was doing. But he was creating them in the way that game development 3D models are needed, because that's probably like 100%, or at this point 99.99% of his job are creating models for game development, games in development. And when we basically said, okay, our use case is not for gaming, you're going to have to adjust these settings for probably the first time ever in your life. Do it this way, position the model in this place in the actual 3D environment, and do this and place these elements that have nothing on them. He didn't quite get all of that, and so we kept getting models that were basically optimized for games. Well, the way that this sort of DirectX 3D system works and where we wanted to place all this stuff was different than the way that these models would be kind of prepared, I guess is the best word, for game development. We don't do it in the same way. And then, of course, we got him to create these models, and at first they were really detailed, and they were performing so terribly. Especially, this was very highly something that we didn't know if we wanted, but these are part of the model right here. And so if you zoom in, these are part of the model, these rivets. And so if you looked at it in a 3D program, you would see that every single one of these is a different, I don't even know what they're called, polygons or whatever that he put in. And we knew that would be not performant. Faucets, there you go. So during the beta period, we removed these and we put in the low, a low version of it where it didn't have that. And I think what we found was it didn't really make as much of a difference as we thought. And people instantly started complaining that they were missing. Like, it was instant. Not even like a second. They're like, oh, why does this model look so much worse? Where did this go? And so like, well, we're not getting much benefit, like performance benefit as we thought. Let's just add them back. And so we added them back. Everybody was happy at the time. And so if you look at like this model, like it's there. We have to find out where that shine would go. And even this one has those rivets, faucets, whatever we want to call it. And without a back. And this model also has that CD case, CD area that CDs could actually go into. And then we've got a lot of programming in the background. I think I've talked about this in the past, but I don't think you've ever heard it. But there's a lot of either platform-specific logic. Sometimes we're reading pixels on the image themselves to determine what spine gets put on there, especially for Sega Dreamcast, right? So if I were to select this Sega Dreamcast game, we're reading a specific pixel. Oh, there. That uses that pixel, that spine design, the dark one. But this one's got the white side, and we realize that one always has this white spine. So let's put that in there. And so a lot of the reasons I think why people, if they do like the 3D models, is because we're doing things automatically for them. You don't have to set this up. Can you imagine what you would have to do? The region does actually play a part in the PAL region versions, right? So we've got like a different spine, knowing that this is not the perfect box. We do the same thing for Sega, Sony PlayStation. That's also, I believe, region specific. And that we have a region specific spine as well for that. A lot of things just going on. And here's exactly what happened. Seabeats, the mastermind behind this feature, what are you saying? The first sets weren't game optimized. You asked for vert reduction. We also have issues with UV mapping, unmapping. And the concept, we wanted the models to utilize several textures instead of unmapping into a single texture like you typically would do in games. And you got around that by procedurally creating geometry that sits inside of the model. Yes. Yeah, we went through a few rounds of getting those models set up in a way that didn't break everything. And since we did that, all we hear is that we're missing cassettes. As far as I'm aware, I don't know. Do you know of any platforms where 100% of the games were cassettes? Ah, that's right. So PDF viewers inside of the pause screen. Adhere to the big box option, right? There's something with the pause screen that's a little different. I can't remember actually if that's true. I don't know if you remember, Seabeats. I can't remember if the pause screen that is used inside of LaunchBox is the same pause screen that's being used inside of Big Box, or there was some kind of difference there. Actually, I think I'm thinking about it incorrectly. Yeah, I can't think of a... I mean, I keep asking this question to people. Like, what is the cassette-based console that exists that we could then programmatically say, okay, that platform uses cassettes, so let's set cassettes as the primary game model. I think the closest that we came to was the ZX Spectrum, but it wasn't like 100% of the... It wasn't 100% of their catalog, but it was like a good amount. I mean, let's even say more than 90% or something. I could be remembering that wrong, but I'm pretty sure it was like cassette heavy. And so if we had a number of different computer-based systems that were very cassette heavy, then we could say, okay, this is the default. I mean, it would be similar to what we do with PlayStation here, where it's like, okay, this is the default one, but users have the ability to change game like specific ones. Right? You can go into a specific game and then go into the 3D model section and then override it to something that's not a cassette. And then that cassette becomes at least useful. Like, people are going to see it without having to do anything. So you think that the ZX Spectrum and the ZX81, are there any more platforms other than those two where we could say with great certainty 80 to 90% of the games that came out for it were on cassettes? So the Commodore 64, I had a friend that had that. Actually, two friends that had it. And used it exclusively for very many years. And I never inserted a cassette into it. It was always discs. Not to say that it doesn't have cassette capability. I was like, I don't think it was the primary way, let alone like 90% of users probably did not use of games came in a cassette. It was probably smaller. So for those, it would be the reverse, right? We would have the box be something else, and then you could override per game the cassette model if you want. Right, but in that instance, a user has to do something in order to see the cassette model to get use out of it. And so we want the reverse. We want to see what is the benefit of including this model? How many platforms can we apply it to automatically? And that'll give us a good idea. Hey, Orion's Angel, welcome in. Glad you're liking the stream. I don't know, what is your opinion? Not opinion. Do you know of any consoles that's 80 to 90% of the games came on a cassette? I know there was other ones in Europe, so like I'm sure that there must be other ones. I just don't know. Like, without being from Europe, I don't really know. Yeah, it would be computer systems only. Maybe it was for North America only. It might be region specific. Because here, like, discs were the thing. That's just the way it was. Like maybe the Amstrad? The Amstrad CPC. I would assume it would have to be computers that come by default with a cassette machine. RetroPython with a second AI generated response. So if that is correct, what that's actually saying is 50% of the games that were available on the Commodore 64 were also available as a cassette version. But it does say especially in Europe, where cassettes were the dominant format for a while due to affordability. So that would make sense then, right? That people from Europe are only seeing cassettes and people in North America were really only seeing, for the most part, discs. So we should be looking at the computers and looking at, which ones came by default with a cassette player. That's probably a good indication. It looks like the Amstrad CPC games came on a cassette deck or a 3-inch floppy disk drive. But which one came with the system? I mean, you could see that there's a cassette built into its keyboard, but was there a disc like on the side of the machine or something? Or was that like a extension? Your first Commodore 64 had that data set. I assume like cassette player. Interesting. Oh yeah. Hey, C Beats isn't wrong. It's time. I think C Beats has got to work on a cassette model. What we're gonna do with it, I don't know yet. We'll apply it to like 3 platforms by default until we get a bigger list. Anyway, that's what we've been up to over the last week. I should have a section of this. I'm supposed to have a section of this stream to tell you guys about the feature base, our new feedback. Our new feedback area. So if you're wanting a feature, let's say you want the PDF viewer in a pause screen to be to adhere to the big box option of using your own thing. This would be a great place to put it where we wouldn't lose it. So this allows you to have put in feature requests for all the different apps, including the games database, and put in a bug report. So maybe it's a bug report, but if it was a bug report, that might get lost more than a feature request. Hey, it's working as intended right now, right? It just happens that as intended means that it's not going to use that setting. Which I guess technically kind of makes sense. I kind of feel like the pause screen is global between LaunchBox and Big Box. I don't know. But what I'd like to do on this stream is people put in requests all the time, and it goes into like a queue that we have to review, and you can imagine that queue can get long. I might have a good like 30 minutes to look through it every day, and so at first I thought I can just look through it on the stream, and everybody can be part of the response and we can have a discussion about it. And then I realized when I'm logged into like the admin account, it's showing people's like email addresses and stuff, so I really can't do it on stream unless I'm doing it off camera. So maybe I can do it that way, I thought this morning. So let's go through a bunch. It looks like I've got 17 waiting. Here we go. And then we can discuss how good these features are, and I can put a value and time effort on them and see what I'm going to do about these. So here's one. It's called Centrally Managing Order for Apps by Region. And what it looks like this guy's referring to is he's imported a whole bunch of ROMs into his library. And now he realizes that he's imported them with the incorrect region priority setting. And so the region priority setting will dictate, if you have multiple versions of the same game, which game is the primary game. So maybe he's from Europe and he wants to see European games as the primary, but the default in the app says that North American games should be primary. And therefore, now all of the North American versions of his games are primary. What can you do? I mean, one thing you can do is just delete those games and then re-import them with your new setting. What he's asking for is a button inside of the region priorities window. So he wants us to go inside of here, region priorities, create a new button here or something like that that says, I'm not sure what it would be called, reprioritize additional apps. And I guess what that would do is it would scan your whole library, find the ones that have additional apps, take those ones, look at the region of all of them, and then kind of knock down your priority list and be like, okay, North America, does any of those versions belong to the North American region? And it'll be no. If it doesn't, go to the next one, United States. Does any of these versions belong to United States? And it would go down there. And if not, it would keep going down the list until it found one. And then when it found one, it would set that as the primary app, move whatever the primary app was to an additional app, and then do that process for the tens, if not hundreds of thousands of games in the user's library. Would anybody here find that useful? Yeah, I mean, yes. Unless you also mean, although I don't know what value would come to this, but reorganizing the additional app list as well to adhere to the region priorities. I think the value that he's stating here is to basically make, like, it's the primary app that you care about, the one that's going to play when you hit the play button. And he wants to make sure that that version of the app is adhering to his region priorities. But then it also means that if he screwed up that priority list, and or he decided to make a change to his priority list in the future after he ran all of his imports, he wants to be able to press a button and reevaluate his whole library to then adhere to this new priority order. That's basically what he wants. I mean, essentially why he's probably putting... Oh, there you go. Jev Clem. So tell us, why specifically are you wanting this request? Are you finding yourself in a situation where you've imported all of these games and you just wish you could click a button and change the additional app path for all of them? The primary default app for all of your games. I mean, I immediately read your request and thought that this would be actually very useful. And then I asked Seabeats, who 100% was trying to get whether this was like technically possible without breaking so many things. Like, what is the risk involved in making a button like that? What's the damage that people could get if they accidentally clicked it? How could we screw this up in a way? I mean, you're dealing with data files, so like, is there a way for us to screw this up and like break everybody's library? But it sounded like the risk was pretty low. And the effort would be also not terrible. And it seemed like we could do it in a global way. Correct, yes. Let's all game. Exactly. So if you had a North American and a European game, but the North American game was the primary one, and you press this button because you decided that this European, you brought this European thing up to the top, and you hit the button, it would then reshuffle all of them to the Europe games. Yeah, it would be a rescan of the library for a very specific way. Also, this would be a great plugin, probably, concept, right? Because it wouldn't be that complicated of a plugin to create. So maybe that's like another thing. Like the second thought is like, does this need to be a feature in LaunchBox, or is this more of like an advanced action set that very few people would use, and a plugin could be good enough for that? But the way that the XML files are laid out, it wouldn't be too tough to move things around. 100% true that the media might have... No, maybe the media wouldn't adjust for the version. It would only need to adjust if the name of the game changed, which, to be honest, I don't think is possible or needed. It's true that if you didn't use LaunchBox and you decided that you wanted to import your own, well, not import, that's the wrong word. If you wanted to place your own images, and those images were based on file name, and you decided you wanted to use a different version, but that version's file name is not the same as the game that you have. I to be honest, I don't remember if we're using or if we have fallbacks for additional apps to display media. There are differences to region box art, but I don't think that this process would also re-scrape media to change the box art. It could. I don't think that this process would, though. A plugin could. Yeah, like I'm assuming Jev, that this was not part of what you were thinking, that we would press the button and we would not only adjust which game's the primary, but we'd also then be like, okay, delete all media for the ones that we changed and re-scrape all of the media with this new region in mind. Although that would be pretty cool. But I could see a lot of people not wanting that. So I would probably think it would be like an option. If I was going to build a plugin, for example, that does this, that would be a really cool option for people that they could disable. That's true. There are some people that... So, not everybody, Jev. If you do, then yeah, you wouldn't need to rescape. But for the most part, I would say most people would probably only have like one box, and that box is related to that one region. Right? In order to make it so that you have everything, while you're going through this import steps, you would remove this image limit, right? No limit. And then you would be downloading your images, and we would just be downloading everything, basically. And in that scenario, yes, a user would have the available images, and yes, region priority would then adjust which image is being used based on that region. Which I'm not sure a lot of people know about, because a lot of people just download one image. Also, these systems don't work if people decide to bring their own images and they just drop them into the image folder. So someone sat here and was like, they had a bunch of boxes. This is a bad example because they're all already in the image folder there. That happens if we don't know what the region is. But yeah. So like, instead of all of the images being inside of North America, if somebody dumped all their images here, I remember a lot of people are like, why do we keep creating these folders? Well, we're using those folders. But if people decided they just wanted to dump images here, none of what we just said, right? Anything related to region with images, that none of that would work. But if you're using our system, where if we know what the region is and we're placing the files in the correct region folder, and this game is the European version and you had a European box for that, we would then display that European box automatically. So yeah, and that's why I would make that an option. But I guess the question is that a good enough feature to include? Like, it's a good quality of life feature. Like your feature is a good quality of life feature to have for people that have a scenario where they have many different regions in their library. The problem with a re-triggering a scan or like an import, for example. So let's say you change the priority and now it starts up this wizard, and the wizard goes through and we're going to re-download all the metadata, we're going to re-download all the media and all that stuff. Is if people had like a lot of custom work that they did in their library, they would lose all of that custom work. And so by doing that, we would have to then develop a way for people to not lose all of that work, which is just another system that we would have to develop. So now we're developing like, okay, here's a locking system. You can lock this field for game specific. Focusborg, you did come in way late again, unfortunately. But I'll stay for as long as I can. To fill you in, because I know you'll have a lot of opinions here. We're looking at a feature by Jev here in the chat that basically says, I want a button here that if I change the region priorities and hit that button, it would rejig my library's additional apps, where it would change the priority or the primary ROM for all of my games to whatever region that I have set here as the priority. So if I had run my imports and all of the games were European priority, and I've got all these, or Japanese games, and I've got 3 different regional versions of a game, and all of them are Japan as the primary app. I want to come in here, adjust this to North America, hit this button, and now all of my games are North American priority on the entire library. Oh, we're talking the entire library. Let's all game. Just a one click. I want all of my library to be this region. Yeah, that's the risk. When you're dealing with people's data, it could break. Like, the risk is that they press a button that they didn't want to press, and now there's not really any going back other than the backups that they have. They would have to know how to restore a backup and all that stuff. So why would that break everything with MSX? So in this case, if there wasn't a North American game, it would not choose that. It would continue with whatever region. So like, let's say you had Nintendo Famicom Disk System, for example, and we know that that was only released in Japan. So if I were to run this for that system and every game in that platform was Japanese game, all the games in that platform would still be a Japanese game. Right? Think of it like this. There's the priority here. First, this would only affect games that have multiple versions, right? So we would be identifying the games that have multiple versions, and we would be using that list to start off. Right? Games without multiple versions, we're not even looking at. Then we would start at the top and say, okay, North America. That's the top of they want. Let's take one game, for example. The game has like 5 different versions, and it would go down the list of all of those versions until it found a North American version, and it would make that the primary version. If it went down the list and there was no North American version, it would leave it as it is and move on to the next one. So by consoles, you mean different emulators. Is that what you mean? Interesting. So how, in your set, how do you handle games that released on cassettes, discs, and carts? Like, what are the different for you for these games? Are you doing game specific command lines? Hmm. I mean, but let's just put that to, to reality. All right, let's say we're looking at 3DO. Okay, so you have all of these different MSX games that are all running through the same emulator. How are you telling it how are you configuring them differently, these versions? Is it through like a command line change? Like per game change? So if, like, let's say going into a game, I'm gonna have to find a game where I have multiple versions. One of these gotta have multiple versions. There's one. Alright, so you're doing command line. So in this case, you would go in here and you have like some custom command line going on in here for this version. And then you go into the additional apps and you go in here and do you have custom command lines for here? I can't remember if we can. Looks like we can have application. Unless you were running like a bat file or something. Right, not for additional apps. I remember that being a request recently. That someone requested that. I think that's probably one of the requests on feature base. So in those MSX games, you have multiple versions of the same game attached to each other, where each one of those games has different ways of launching them. But now you're saying through command line, but that doesn't exist. So is it something else? How would you do that if our system can't do command line on a per game basis? I mean, it sounds like we need to add that feature in. Okay, so this sounds like this feature wouldn't affect MSX then. I mean, other than maybe this shouldn't be a global option. I can see that. Although now you're talking about like adding an option somewhere. Right, like it wouldn't affect that system. So like you have no problem. It would just go through, do its scan, and do nothing to MSX. So, nothing. Everything's fine. I'm more looking for platforms where this becomes hugely problematic. And so this would become hugely problematic if you have a platform. So like, let's say you have 5 platforms and 4 of those platforms have North American ROMs and Japanese ROMs. And you've prioritized North American ROMs. And then you got another platform where you also have 2 sets of regional based versions of the ROMs. But in this set, you've prioritized Japanese ROMs and you've prioritized over North American ROMs, and you got both of those. And so running this tool would break either 4 of your sets or 1 of them, because you wanted those regionals based between those platforms to be separate. So for like a global option, this might not be good. For a platform specific option, that scenario would be fine, right? But does anybody have that? Like, this would be great. Does anybody have a scenario where they have a platform where, not saying that the region of the ROMs that you have are different than what you would want, but that the region that you have is not what you normally would want, but then you also have a different region in there that you don't want to be prioritized for the same version of the same game. Yeah, it scares you, Focusor. I don't think we want to develop a feature that scares you, but we also, that's not like a thing that you want to develop around. You don't want to develop around like emotions. Like, let's just look at what the facts are. Like, technically, it's possible to have this scenario. So, but in reality, is it a scenario that exists that you would want to, that someone's going to be like, oh, nice, this is exactly what I wanted. You did all this extra work and now I'm benefiting from that work? Or are you going to basically say, oh, you made this feature super complicated than it needed to be, and now instead of me pressing 1 button, you're forcing me to press like 50 buttons to update all of my games, or you've made it just overly complicated. Like, why did you do this? No one's using all these features. I don't really know the answer to that. But for this feature, let's write down some stuff. Yeah. It's also debatable on whether the person that did use it meant to use it in that way, or did they accidentally use it and now they don't really know what the heck just happened. But it's always like I started this conversation. You might have missed it, Focusborg. I started it by saying anything that you add that deals with changing someone's library, like data files, is always scary. So like you've got to be very careful with that. But I think I'm like you. I only really want like the region that I want. I don't want to have 3 different regions of the same game. And yeah, I am doing well. I hope you're doing well. But you came in after like almost been 3 hours since I've been starting streaming, so you got to catch up. You got to play catch up. I'll tell you everything that we discussed, all the important stuff. This is coming. I showed off this feature of LaunchBox. That's coming. Badges, for example. And I'm going to switch to this one. And apply it to LaunchBox and Big Box. And look at that. My badges just changed. Maybe I didn't want that one, and I wanted to download this white filled one and apply it only to LaunchBox. There we go. Now I've got these white badges. Two hours. I'm surprised it didn't go longer than that. Just clicking random platforms and games. Yeah, thanks for sharing. That's amazing. That's what this is all about, right? And then you started playing Jackbox games. I love the Jackbox games. I love the games that came out, like the first set of games. Not Jackbox, the You Don't Know Jack. I played that a lot. Yeah, Mr. Nibble's really big on the Jackbox games. 1 to 10. Download them all, and that will be what you do. Those are the necessary ones. Anyway, yeah, I got through one request, and we're getting to the very end here, so there's 16 more. So number 2 by Chris BGR wants, let's see, I haven't read this one. A game's playtime includes time when the emulator is closed, but the save your screenshot for game window is open. Okay, I'm trying to think of the scenario that happens. I believe that scenario is when you're using retro achievements and you earn an achievement And you also make it so that those, when you earn an achievement, you take a screenshot. I feel like it might also be the case where you just take screenshots manually. How many people do this when they're playing? So you play a game, and you're playing the game and you're taking a screenshot, let's say through RetroArch or maybe OBS. Maybe there's a screenshot button in OBS if you have that set up. And if you do that, you close down the game and then a prompt comes up that says, do you want us to save these screenshots into this game's screenshot folder? And what he's saying is, when that prompt comes up, we are still tracking playtime. And for some reason, that's a problem for him. And he's saying, somehow he gets into a situation where he's playing the game, he takes screenshots, he closes the game, he leaves his computer like instantly before, I guess, the close game window appears. So he can't see that there's a prompt that comes up. And when he comes back, the game now has hours of playtime because now he's seeing like a prompt that says, like, do you want to save these screenshots? I could see that being a problem for that use case. So I am going to set this to investigation, because we got to confirm that that's actually a problem. It's not a RetroArch prompt. It's a LaunchBox prompt that basically says, we recognize that you took screenshots in RetroArch. Do you want to import them into LaunchBox? I don't think it's used very often, to be honest. I've seen it. Right, if you're taking your own screenshots, sometimes it happens with achievements. So if you set RetroArch to take a screenshot every time you earn an achievement, I've done that before. Or if you just manually take a screenshot in RetroArch, we will try to import. We will ask if you want those screenshots imported. I don't see how that's related to your PDF problem, but that's a good one. Next one, no bezel option. Okay, so here, this guy went through the single platform import wizard, decided, hey, I would love to have bezels. Downloads bezels. No, sorry, that's not what he wants. He's saying he let the wizard install RetroArch. Okay. After this process, the option to install bezels does not appear. However, if I install RetroArch manually, the option to install bezels returns. I don't think that's true. I'm very highly skeptical of this guy. I think it's very platform specific. So he's referring to this window here inside of. So let's say I were to import Nintendo Entertainment System, and he gets to, like, he decides he's going to download. Oh, it didn't even come up. Maybe he is right. All right, we're going to have to check this out. I just proved myself wrong. All right, Joe, what's broken? In fact, I just contradicted what he just said. He's saying that in this scenario that I'm just going through, the bezel window should be there. Interesting. But it's not. Unless he's saying, like, unless what's broken is that bezel window is gone for everything, for every platform. Was there any information about... I see. Is there any information about whether the drag drop wizard is broken in the same way? Or... I guess the other scenario is... This must be a very new issue. Let's All game. Funny how this stuff crops up. Yep, it's showing here too. Manually configure RetroArch. That's an interesting one. What are the other scenarios? So in this case, the workaround is, hey, just run a second download media thing, which does work. In fact, well, then how would that explain future wizard? So like I have RetroArch installed already, and I'm going to do one where I know that there's a bezel pack for. We get this screen, we get choose this, the emulator screen. Oh, okay. So it only appears, so it won't appear during that first download, is what you're saying. That actually, yeah, that makes sense then. What you're saying makes a lot of sense. Has that, so I kind of feel like, has that ever worked? That might have never worked. This is like not a new problem. Like this is not a problem. Like this is This is only a problem because people are using the old single platform import, okay? So this is not a bug. This is just the system. There's no way, and how would you solve that? There's no way to like know. I guess there is a way. Yeah, there's a way. Grumble. How many people are complaining about it? Is like one person, and then everyone's else like, yeah, I see that as well. I don't know. And like, I'm assuming someone told them, well, just select those games and download the bezels. That solves that problem, right? Yeah, right. Because if you, as an example for Let's All Games, if you downloaded RetroArch or manually installed RetroArch yourself and configured it yourself, if you even went here and went to the emulators, add emulator, chose RetroArch, and then downloaded it here and then ran an update or run an import, you would not have that problem. The problem comes in, you want bezels, you have absolutely nothing, you don't have RetroArch installed on your machine, and you run through one of those import wizards and you get us to automatically download RetroArch, but during that one platform we're probably using the RetroArch.exe or something that indicates that RetroArch exists, and then we use that to determine whether that page is visible, to determine whether that platform is eligible for bezels, basically. Does this platform have a bezel pack on the bezel project that we could download that's compatible with the RetroArch core, an option combination or whatever that they've chosen or whatever we've decided to do? Right, you have there's nothing on the system to know. But could we decouple that? Could we just be like, well, they chose that they want us to install RetroArch, so use that data point as a reference to determine whether that bezel pack option appears, and then at the end do things in a process order that allows us to first install RetroArch and then import the games and then download the bezels and put them in the right spot, and then download the media for those games or something like that. So that's what that one's about. All right. I had to give a value to that one of like how earth-shattering. Is this stopping anybody from using LaunchBox or using a feature of LaunchBox? Surprisingly, they put down that they regularly run into this problem. How do you regularly run into this problem? What scenario would that be? Where you're continuously having to download RetroArch into your library. Sometimes I don't understand these statistics that you're choosing, or the way that the users are choosing this. This is extremely urgent for this user, even though they solve the problem themselves by running through the import once. Oh, but then they give like a good value for how important it is for them. They said, "Oh, it's nice to have, not not that important." That's interesting. All right, it is a problem. It is using sort of the legacy process that we don't necessarily want to recommend. We want people to use either the automated process, like if you're a new user and you have no games, or you can use the multiple platform process. Although if you're an advanced user, you still want to use the platform, the single platform yourself. But then if you're a more advanced user, you would also want to go into either download RetroArch yourself or go into the manage emulator section and download it yourself. Conflicted. So this person is saying that they believe that they are not able to see the Poppins font in the default theme. Are they saying which theme? Oh, in LaunchBox. Interesting. On LaunchBox 13.20. I've never heard of another person that experiencing this. Does anybody use the default theme and these fonts are not these fonts? Does LaunchBox look different than what you see on my screen? Assuming that, I mean, I didn't change it, right? So let's see if it's globally broken. Oh, those look right. You just installed it on a fresh system yesterday. Focusborg. I created the default theme. I did all the designy things and everything. Right? I determined that at this pixel length, move things over there and over there, and now this play button's over there, and then change this thing over here. And then make the font bigger, and as you're scrolling down, make the font smaller. But that's interesting. Who does use the default theme? Who's using a different theme? And which theme do you use, Focusborg? Please don't say Omni. That's an interesting question. Which theme does everybody use in LaunchBox? Is that even important to them? Or are you using LaunchBox for management only? And so you want it to be as bare bones as possible. Okay, you can say Omni if you want, Joe. I did not realize that there was an update. When did he release that? Oh god, it's been 2 months. I didn't realize that he updated Omni. Update. Look, I can test the update system, and I could see that it's broken. Oh, there you go. Update. Nope. All right, I'm gonna get that down. Oh, and you're using it, bare bones. So which theme would you use then? Or are you just using the default theme? And let's say if you're using it just for management purposes. So like one way that would be really nice to use for management is the list view, and then you wouldn't even need the game details really. I mean, you can put the information that you want here. Okay, so theming is important only for Big Box. So which theme do you use in Big Box? And before you answer that, know that there is a right answer. So you want a third program called MiniBox? What would MiniBox do for you? Yeah, but what would you use it for? Because like Steam, like how many games would you have in Steam? Like the maximum amount that, let's say the outliers of people that have so many games in Steam are what, 2,000 to 5,000 games or something like that. That's like a small build in LaunchBox. So we're dealing with a little bit of a different situation. Okay, so you would use it that's specific to you just wanting to play games. You want like a little mini, almost like you want a widget, right? You want like a little widget where you can cycle through some platforms, choose a game. Oh, did you know that LaunchBox has the ability to download icons? Per game icons? We don't use them yet. But in that scenario, that would make sense, right? You would just have like a little list of your games and you'd have like an icon for the game. Oh yeah, Omni. That's why he did the update, isn't it? I didn't actually read the changelog. I should have read the changelog. This was completely was a Sea Beats change. He was waiting for icons, and I said, if you want icons, you're gonna have to add them into the database, and if you want that, you're gonna have to wait a long time for it to be populated. And then he said, Joe Viking has a plugin that will download these icons for me, so don't worry about that. And then I said, this will only solve that problem for you and your theme. He's like, that's all I need. And then we did it. It's all coming back to me. Yeah, you're right. 1.8, add icons to game text view, text list. So only for that one little list view are the icons supported, I'm assuming. Did he update his image? He did not. There you go. And Jeb, you're saying you use colorful and 3 dimensions for those 3D box models. You think colorful is nearly perfect, but there's small lag when switching from platform to games list. That's interesting. By lag, do you mean there's a loading screen? Because yeah, you're having to switch from one view to another. Let's pick that up. I don't think that's theme specific, to be honest. I think that's just what happens. Like the view loads up so quickly that, and there's no transition. The question then is, what transition do you have on per screen changes? I don't even remember what that's called. Maybe it's called per view change. Like there's an option inside of a big box that allows you to set a transition animation between views. So between like the transition between platform to a games list. I feel like I don't even know what the default is. I'm gonna guess it's like a fade, maybe. I know some people switch that to none. They don't want to see a transition. And when that happens, it tries to load it as quickly as possible. But I can also see Colorful's doing a heck of a lot of stuff. But to be honest, I don't think that that transition is theme specific. I feel like that's just what Big Box does. It loads the view, then it loads the stuff in the theme for that view. Although I haven't tested in a while, so I don't know. Maybe I can check that out. I assume that's not a problem as much if you're using the dark colorful theme. Are you using dark or light? Should probably. Yeah, understandable. I have a feeling that I'm on a branch, a testing branch, where Big Box will not open. Or I'm just doing too much on my computer. but yeah, it doesn't look like it's going to open. And I'll try one more time for you. I was also having building problems at the beginning of this stream when nobody was here. I'm gonna assume that it's that. Yeah, it's doing the same thing. But I will believe you. I'll check it out as well. But I do feel that it's probably just the way Big Box operates. But if it's not, I will take a look. Okay, so back to it's possible. That's why I would do that. So back to this guy that somehow is losing. He's saying that it's losing the Poppins font, which is the default font. The workaround solution for that, I mean, we established nobody here has ever seen that happen. But the solution for that is to install the Poppins font. So you would go into LaunchBox themes folder, default fonts, and you would run install on all these. And that would solve your problem. We do run some sort of system level thing where we're like we're not installing the font, but we're like injecting the font is the best term I can think of right now, where it like temporarily thinks it's installed or acts like it's installed. So that, and really it's not to use the font. We can use the font without needing to do that. It's so that you can choose the font when you go into the options menu. That's really the only reason. And that's under here, so like game details title font. So you can see that Poppins is there, even though I probably did not install it. I think that's why it's that, or maybe I did install it, I don't remember. So what he's saying is 13.20, the Poppins font will just randomly, while he's using LaunchBox, just be replaced by Microsoft Sans Serif. The only way to restore the correct font is to apply another theme, restart, reapply the default theme, and restart again. Trying to manually set the Poppins font in the font selector tool results in an error. So I'm going to ask, if you go into the LaunchBox themes, default fonts folder, select all the fonts, right click and hit install. Does this remove your issue? I will move this to awaiting further details and get that out of our queue. We're down to 13. Feature request. All right, this is a LaunchBox for Windows feature request. Let's see what they want. Feature request to have LaunchBox cache his games from his NAS folder, from his NAS computer. So let's see what it says. He used to use the Archive Cache Manager plugin. It has stopped working because the author is no longer actively maintaining it. So he wants LaunchBox to do what the plugin does. Okay. And so what feature of that is he using? LaunchBox can already copy his ROMs from his NAS to his local hard drive. All right, still waiting for the part where he says why he's doing this. Oh, still looking. This would be useful. Okay, here. This would be useful for emulators like RetroArch, where you can have settings based on what folder the ROM was launched from. Still not understanding why. That doesn't solve his problem. But this is his biggest use case right now. Okay, well, he also wants LaunchBox to move over his files that aren't zipped. Oh man, he didn't really say why he wants this in any way. Like, did anybody understand, or did I say this weird? So basically he's saying, this is my request. My request is, I have my games on my NAS. I want to import them from my NAS. When I play a game, I want you to make a copy of that game on my local hard drive. And then save that on my local hard drive forever. And so for Chunky, you know that we do this on Android already, right? And I know that there's a use case for this, right? The use case is I'm on like another client. I'm on like a handheld or a laptop or something, and I want all my games to show up on my laptop, but I don't have space for it, so it's on my NAS. But then I want to it's almost like a download to play later feature, offline feature, or away from your house if you don't have your NAS set up to be accessible throughout the internet. And so you would want to download that ROM and save it, and then have maybe management features to manage that file later. And then so that you can go travel or something and still have access to those games. Yeah, like an install option, right? That makes sense. This is not what the guy is requesting, just so that you understand. He wants this feature mostly because he's zipping and archiving his games over somewhere else. And he says because he wants RetroArch to be able to utilize per content directory options. Well, DOS games would only be complicated because of the different ways that you can have your DOS games, right? It wouldn't be as complicated if there was only one way to have your DOS games configured. But I mean, people can zip their DOS games. People can just have them in a folder. If they're all in a folder and we were using relative paths, we just say, hey, download the whole folder. It gets more complicated with disk-based games if you're deciding to mount like a CD or something like that. This also would not work with MAME games. Oh, and I missed that. Reminds me. You might not be here. I don't know if you're still here or how far I have to go to see your comment. Global Underground. I saw your chat and then completely missed. You said, do you prefer merged or split ROMs? Uh, I would not choose either of those. I definitely choose to do non-merged ROMs. Does anybody have a differing opinion on that? But anyway, yeah, and the non-merge ROMs have the most utility, and so there's really no contest. True, but have you, like focus work, like in reality, have you ever played a ROM based game and thought, man, this is so slow. This loading of this game is super slow. What if I could take up more space and copy it onto my solid state drive? This would just play so much faster. Uh, your Switch games. Yeah. Yeah, maybe. Although I don't think that the problem with the Switch games is it being on a mechanical drive. Although I could be wrong. If you had your Switch games, how much quicker would your process be to build those shaders? So we're building an entire feature to transfer PS3 games. Not to mention though that, yeah, I don't know. I'll have to try that out. I'll take a PS3 game and do some tests. Yeah, so I think like the biggest feature is the fact that people, you want your games to be in one location, and then you want this device that you have to be able to play the game, but also like have it usable outside of your home kind of thing. Like he's basically wanting a server client type of situation. The problem is that's not what he's asking for in this request. He's saying he wants this because it would then allow him to have RetroArch be able to save his settings properly. But the problem is if you don't do this, if you don't like cache your games, you just run them from your NAS, the RetroArch settings work just fine. And so he's causing the problem by wanting to transfer them locally and then wanting a solution because of that problem. But in actuality, there are relevant like use cases for what he's asking for. It's just he's not asking for it for that reason. So I'm not probably ask him for some clarification here. He's using like content directory saving basically. So if we were to move the files into a new folder, that folder now becomes the new content directory settings override area, which can cause problems if that area is temporary. I don't know, like it. That's what there's a little like question mark of what he actually is trying to solve. That's what I don't know. I know that the archive manager thing is broken. This could be solved by someone updating it. The author would probably hold the keys to that. All right, last one here. Since I'm gonna have to go, importing with RetroArch not appear. Okay, I don't understand what that means, but let's see if the description is better. After the latest LaunchBox update, they're unable to import games. Importing ROMs for RetroArch, I'm going to assume he means importing ROMs where the emulator is set to RetroArch causes LaunchBox to create a new data XML file. Okay, that could lead to us. Oh, he's saying that the name of the data file that gets created is named after the folder and not named after the platform name that he's importing. Interesting. Okay, so that's easy to test. Let's see if that's a problem. Let's take a tiny system, Sega 32X. And now this system's called Focusborg 32X. The Focusborg 32X. And I'm going to import the Focusborg 32X. Didn't you know, Focusborg, that you created a system called the Focusborg 32X? And we're going to scrape that value as the 32X. I mean, I'm assuming that's what he's doing. For the latest update. Yeah. So he had a platform called GBC. That was his platform. Not sure why you would want to name your platform GBC. Well, I actually know why he has a folder called that. Although it looks like he was using the drag and drop wizard. Dragging a ROM from the folder to the LaunchBox window, it import without creating new XML file. Oh. Okay. Yeah, so this might be a problem. But I might not be doing this correctly. To see that problem. Let's see. So this may create... Alright, we're finishing. This is true. We should not get a file called Focusborg. But we do get a file called Focusborg. Okay, maybe I'm reading this wrong. Your file, that's right. Let me read this one more time. So he's saying, okay, I think I read it wrong. Maybe. So, sorry about this, but we're going to delete Focusborg out of here. So one of two things he's saying. Either he's saying that Sega... Okay, so the Focusborg folder, he dragged in, and he wants it to be part of Sega's 32X. I already have the game in there. Okay. He wants it to be part of 32X, but instead tries to put it into a Focusborg file. I'm not seeing a Focusborg file. So that is not the... Okay, so I'm going to have to ask him. Probably. I'll ask him our regular question. All right, well, that is... I've got the queue down to 12. So that's good, and hopefully I can get that down to nothing in the next little while. As long as nobody puts in a request, I should be good. Crusade, welcome in. Glad you're able to catch the stream, even if it's at the end. You requested the autoplay music for the pause screen. It was not talked about today. I believe we did talk about it last Thursday, though. Oh, Chunky, no! Let me get this down to 0, at least for one day. We talked about it last stream. I don't remember when we talked about it in the last stream. And hopefully I'm not remembering wrong and we talked about it 2 streams ago. That's also a possibility. But your request, quickly, correct me if I'm wrong, you open up the pause screen and you have pause music. You have some global pause music playing. You know, some sort of like elevator music or something. And then I believe in that ticket, I had written that... Let's see if I can find it. There it is. Yeah, there you go. You got 4 people that voted for it. Yeah, so I said there would be general music, but then you also thinking like platform specific music. So you open it and it plays music based on the platform that the game's in. And then it's like, okay, you want to go even further? And do you want to add game specific background music? So maybe it uses the user's background music that plays that's assigned to the game's music folder or music value, or maybe it's some other music, and then users can determine how deep do they want to go for this. And then I asked, like, in your vision, what are you thinking? Oh, and then I even went deeper and said, okay, do you feel themes should have the ability to override a user setting or not? So in your eyes, it's just a random set of music files that then plays. It's like a playlist or something that would just be random every time you open the pause menu. It would be like a shuffle. We would be shuffling the files that are in there. Or do you see value in a random shuffle versus just like go in file name order, top to bottom? Or are you thinking that it would be like platform specific music? So there'd be like the ability to have platform folders, and then there'd be a Sega Genesis folder, and inside of there'd be a bunch of music that would only play if you're pausing a Sega Genesis game. And I guess if we take a step back, is there anybody here that would love that? That I'm assuming that you thought, man, this pause screen is too quiet. Is there anybody that would think, pause screens should be quiet? I'm pausing the game specifically for the silence. And so having music would maybe detract from that. So give me the option to turn it off. So it would be a feature that may have two sides to two sides to it, where people either love it or hate it, kind of thing. So you just want a global music, Chunky, and you want that music to be the GoldenEye pause music. I don't even remember what the GoldenEye pause music is. I played that game so many times. Actually, I think I do know what it is.
Tune check music.
Yeah, I remember that. I don't think that was the real one, though. There you go. Yeah, it's all coming back to me. Anyway, all of that. Okay. Yeah, put your thoughts in your ticket. Answer. I'm sure people would love to see what you were thinking, your responses to the questions that I had there. And for people that like that idea, go and vote for this. It's already available and open to the community over here on the pause screen, or on the feature base. And all I did was type in music, but you can type pause screen music. I assume you can just type in pause music. Pause. Wow, that brought up more stuff. Pause music. There it is. And definitely vote for it. So anyway, I do have to go. thank you so much for hanging out. Next time, Focusborg is going to do his very best to come earlier in the stream. And we can have longer discussions about all these cool things. And just maybe Chunky will stay away from the submitting a request long enough for me to get through these last 12 items. And then the world will be a better place, at least for a day. All right, you could be busy. I know, we need a Focusborg button that just like beeps your phone or something. All right, guys. We'll see you guys next week. Have a good weekend. And we will be back next Thursday with myself and all of you guys, hopefully. All right, see you guys. Take care.